Let's see if this is working. Okay, it's working. Great. Cool. I didn't fuck it up this time. I fucked it up twice, actually. So the first time, I didn't hit the button at the same time as Lydia did. And then after I started recording, I realized I wasn't actually recording anything, which is fine. I know how technology works, but it's okay because now you're listening to Let's Unpack That, a podcast where two of us, college-educated women, discuss important literary phenomenons from our past and analyze them in a socio-political manner, if that makes any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's okay. Also, Lydia's on drugs today. Good morning!
It is not morning. It is 8 p.m. and I am on prescribed inhalants for my asthma because I just did exercise.
What?
I just did yoga for 20 minutes.
You did yoga for 20 minutes? How did that feel?
It felt very good.
Whoa.
I'm trying to exercise more, because I don't move a lot during the day. I sit at a desk, and it's a healthy thing to move your body and to utilize your body in a way that stresses it just a little bit.
Proud of you. I actually went to the gym for the first time on Tuesday.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I have this book. It's called Rider Fitness. It's supposed to target the muscles that I use the most when I'm riding horses, and we'll see how it goes. And then I did 10 minutes of core work, so it was fun. And then I spent 2 days shoveling snow, so that also counted as a workout, because those of us who apparently live under a rock have not heard of the bomb cyclone, which just hit Colorado, and we all froze and had to dig ourselves out of the snow after we were buried alive, essentially. So that's been fun. And that was my week of exercise, was the gym and then digging for a long time.
I feel like shoveling snow is a higher impact sport than most sports, and especially yoga. So I'm going to take a back seat on this.
Sit down, Lydia.
Yeah. Has it occurred to you that we're not recent college grads anymore?
Don't say that, because then that makes me feel like we're getting old.
Yeah, I mean, it's been less than a year still, but we're coming up on a year.
Nah, we still got a month.
And then it'll be a year.
We got a month and 5 days. It's fine. Don't... Man, can you imagine? Do you remember just like how anxiety-filled we all were this time last year?
Oh, yeah. Woo.
But I find myself missing California more and more each day, and I find myself missing Pepperdine especially. And that could just be because I miss my friends, which is probably actually most of it. And then, with the 5 feet of snow that we just got, that also might add to the fact that I miss California a little bit and living on the beach. But,
yeah.
It's how the clocks have gone forward, despite us not wanting them to.
Also, daylight saving time started.
Thank God. It's finally light enough for me to go visit my horse after work.
Like, as much as I will bitch and moan about daylight saving time as much as anybody else, I do enjoy going home at a time when it is still light. And arriving home and still having natural light coming into my room.
Yeah.
So summer's coming.
Again, I can't relate, but
yeah,
I'm glad that you feel like summer's coming. Especially since we're supposed to get more snow on Tuesday here, so it's fine. By the time they're listening to this, there may have been another bomb cyclone or another gigantic blizzard that's buried me alive, so... if you don't hear from me again for another month, it's because I'm trying to dig my way out of my house. Also, I just wanted to throw a quick shout out to our buddy Micah Ben, who is apparently one of our most consistent listeners. Buddy, you are the best. I miss your face in my life, and I hope you're kicking ass wherever the hell you are. But you are a beautiful human being and doing great with your life. So thanks for listening to us. And hopefully you're listening to the shout out now. Otherwise, it's going to make me feel really awkward. But anyway, you're beautiful. Thanks for listening.
We can only get our stats from SoundCloud right now because iTunes waits until you get famous, which might not happen.
That's fine.
But that's okay.
That's okay. This is all for Micah Ben.
Yeah, it's for
fine.
Micah Ben.
Do it for Micah Ben!
Anyway, so today we're talking about chapters 13 and 14 of Twilight by Stephenie Meyer, and we have a whole lot to say.
Before we get started into this actual reason why we're doing this podcast, I just want to know, do you think our roommates actually listen to our podcast?
Are you recording right now?
Yes.
No.
Okay, well, then this is us officially calling them out. It's fine. You just don't support our hopes and dreams. I'll somehow find a way to get over it. Speaking of hopes and dreams, Bella has found all of hers in the form of an Adonis-like creature.
Woo woo. And
Ooh.
I have a 30-page article about Adonis open in JSTOR. We're back, baby. And it's, ooh, yes.
But here's the real important question. Did you read all 30 pages?
No, I think I'm on page 6.
Okay.
But I'm going to read the whole thing. JSTOR is back. It has decided not to fail me this time. I love it. I just love it. 6 free articles per month. Ooh. Not sponsored.
Let's talk about chapter 13. Basically, Edward sparkles. And it's a lot of back and forth. That's really kind of, stupid.
Writing-wise, this chapter impressed me more than the others. The descriptions were very vivid, and I actually thought that the description of Edward sparkling was kind of beautiful. Kind of reminded me of your Anastasia palette that you got from Sephora all those years ago.
I don't know how you remember that, because I don't even think I used it all that much, but yes, it is kind of like that Sephora palette, or that Anastasia palette. Ugh, yeah. It's my glow kit. Anastasia Beverly Hills. Again, not sponsored, but please feel free to sponsor me at any point if you would like, because I love you. But yes, my sparkly glow stuff.
I mean, I remember that because you were going on and on about it for weeks, and I think I was there when you finally bought it. The small sparkles. The teeny sparkles. It also reminded me kind of that Jenna Marbles video where she covers her entire face in rhinestones.
Excellent. In the movie, they make him look fuzzy. Like, he looks like he's covered in sparkly fur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Like, I don't know why that is, but he just looks fuzzy to me.
I could see how that would be the closest they could get with special effects at that time.
They should have just covered him in highlighter. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think in a modern day adaptation of Twilight, that's what would happen. They would do highlighter and maybe a little bit of enhancing in post.
I love it. Enhancing in post. Listen to you.
I know my movie terms.
You know your movie terms, and that's also what you do to the podcast.
I try. I do my best with what we have. But another thing about his skin, it mentions bluish veins, and I was wondering what is inside those veins, because I think it has to be a dark liquid for it to be blue.
Yeah.
I am not an anatomy expert, and I was meaning to look this up in a book. In my brief Google ventures, I found out that blood absorbs all light except for blue, and so that's why it looks blue from the skin, or like the skin refracts the blue. I don't know. Anyway, there has to be something inside the veins.
But I always thought the blue was the blood that was deoxygenated.
Misconception. Blood is never blue. So yeah, I don't know what's inside those veins.
It's along with his weird vampire sperm, the appearance of liquids that we don't know where they're coming from.
That's a little bit disturbing, come to think of it. All right.
But like, why did you like the language better in this chapter? How did it impress you a little bit more?
Well, first, I can tell that Stephenie Meyer really worked on this chapter and was really trying to get the scene right with the descriptions of the meadow and of Edward's skin, and trying to be precise in describing Edward's skin, because I can't think of any other fantasy piece of media where a creature sparkles like this. There's a higher level of vocabulary. You can tell that Edward slips into more old-fashioned dialogue, which is noticeably different from Bella's modern speech. It mentions his gentle cadences of an earlier century, and it's like a 19th century novel, the way he speaks. And I think that was on purpose, and that is one thing that Stephenie really paid attention to here, and I appreciate that. What I also noticed with that was that Bella starts to speak like him. She takes on an old-fashioned vernacular gradually in this chapter, and so it's like she's imitating him.
Where do you see that happening? I agree with you, but do you have an example of where that happens? Like what page?
On page 269, she says, "How calmly I could discuss my own death." And that sounds very much like a 19th century heroine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and then she also says on page 273, after he goes, "You are the most important thing to me now." Ugh. She goes, "My head was spinning at the rapid change in the direction our conversation had taken from the cheerful topic of my impending demise. We were suddenly declaring ourselves."
Yeah. Declaring yourself is a very old-fashioned term for confessing one's love.
Which is another thing that I'm reading in this chapter, and I'm like, where has the time gone that suddenly, he thinks of her as the most important thing ever, and she's madly in love with him. But I mean, this is obviously, in the eyes of teenagers. So I remember what it was like to be a teenager and thinking you were in love every other day. But still, if Bella's supposed to act so much older and not be, if her mom tells her, "You were never a teenager, sweetie," that's exactly how she's acting. And it's taken a left turn, and suddenly he's the most important thing to her and she's the most important thing to him out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah. And keep in mind, I think we're also already more than halfway through the book. It's just now getting to the point. Oh, man. I think it's supposed to be like a slow burn, which is why we're already more than halfway through the book and they're just now having this intense moment together. But it's just, no, I don't get the burn. I just get the slow.
No, and there's no buildup. There's no foundation. There's a lot of angst and like sideways glances and being like, "Why you so obsessed with me?" and, whatever. And a lot of back and forth and internal monologue. And then I think the dumb thing is when we had a chance to get to know Edward and we had a chance to see Bella and Edward's relationship, like when they're talking at the lunch table, we skip over all of that. We skip over all of the questions. We skip over their conversation, and we just have to assume that whatever they're talking about is important and meaningful. And then suddenly we're supposed to arrive at the same conclusion that, yep, they love each other, when really we have no basis for it.
I feel like those conversations could have done a lot more.
Yeah.
To lead up to this moment, because this is a very intense scene. It's a very intense will they, won't they, attraction and repulsion and attraction again and repulsion again and like I can't and
And this is like, even if you remember the trailer for the movie, this is like the big scene that they're capitalizing on in the trailer. And then in the movie itself, this is like the big scene. Mm-hmm. This is like the drama and the intense music. This is happening. But even then, I mean, God, I even feel like in the movie they established the relationship better than this is here. Because up until now, we're just supposed to assume that everything's great and follow along there. But we haven't really had anything to build up on.
Yeah, I think the main difference between this scene, how it operates in the book and how it operates in the movie, is really down to how far into the media it is, being halfway through the book and like 30 minutes into the movie. I think the movie does a good job of building their relationship after this moment and not making this moment a culmination of anything. It's just the beginning of something.
Yeah.
The real meat of the relationship comes after.
No, you're exactly right there. That's exactly right and really well put. And I wouldn't be so turned off with the fact that we're halfway through the book and they're just now finding this out about each other if we had had more of a solid build-up. If this had been more of them getting to know each other, if we had seen more than inner monologue and wondering why he's so angry all the time, then definitely take the full first half of the book to start this relationship off. But, acting like this is the high point and saying like, okay, this is how, we know how we feel now. Goodbye. We haven't walked that journey with Bella and Edward yet. There's been no, establishing it yet. And, to this day, I've read all the books in the series. I think I've even read probably all of them at least twice. And I don't know what Bella and Edward have in common. I don't know what attracts the two of them together because it's just never established. They're attracted to each other, but it's all physical. It all has to do with his bloodlust for her, and it all has to do with him being, this godlike creature in her eyes. But really, what is it about the two of them that brings them together?
I feel like a lot of the conversation in the next chapter, where they do talk really honestly and openly, especially about Edward and his family, could have come before this and would have made the payoff actually understandable.
Yeah, if they discussed all of this and said, hey, this is what's going on, and then slowly build up to a romantic relationship, then again, I think we're also giving a lot of credit for what was meant to be a very young YA romance novel that was aimed at kids who were our age when we were 11 and 12 and reading it. It was aimed to be not a very intense, deep level novel. And, you know, she's written other books since that go more intensely, that go very deep. She has another book out called The Host, and I read it when I was probably 13. And she calls it her more adult novel. And that's simply because there's more, you know, the way I see it, there's more depth to it. There's a lot more character building. It's not even adult in the way that we would think of it adult-like in terms of sex or language or anything like that. It's more intense. This is a very base level novel.
Yeah.
Maybe looking back, we're expecting it to be a lot more than it was. Because now we want to hold ourselves to higher standards. We want to put better influences. We want to put better media in front of children to have them, I don't even know how to word it. We want to put better things in front of them so that they're not basing their expectations off of stuff that's just not going to happen. Not in the way, and that's not to say, you know, Disney movies and romance novels aren't wonderful and perfect, because I grew up on Disney and I love it. But I think in terms of when we're turning to really deep subjects like this, like love and sexuality, now the expectation is to put a little bit more depth into it, especially for the younger generation that is so impressionable and are trying to find themselves through media, through books, through movies, through song, whatever it is.
To add to what we said last week about infatuation rather than love, I think that is a projection of our older selves trying to have this expectation of a quite old book, but also just from a writing standpoint, from a plotting standpoint, this should have been the scene where they said, "I love you" for the first time.
Yeah.
That's just how it feels to me. Like, regardless of everything else, this is a huge scene and there should be a payoff. And the payoff, I feel like, isn't there, partly because they've already said, "I love you." I don't write romance. I don't read a lot of romance, but beyond, like, "I love you," what other huge point is there in a teenage relationship other than sex, which we're getting to soon?
Yay.
But you work up to that, and then, like, there is so much media about how saying "I love you" for the first time is such a big deal, and it wasn't a big deal here, and I don't quite get that.
And I think, I mean, remembering my relationships in high school, saying "I love you" wasn't really all that difficult.
Oh man, it was super difficult for me. Oh man. It's a huge deal.
It's a huge deal. And you had a lot more sense than I did.
Thank you.
I mean, Jesus Christ, I was declaring myself pretty early into the relationship. And even now, it's like, you know, wow, I didn't need to do that. That's not something that needs to happen. It doesn't need to be this whole thing. But I think that also came from the idea that I really thought the only reason to be dating, or the only reason you were attracted to someone or whatever, was because you loved them, or that you were building towards love. Mm-hmm. And it never really occurred to me that it could just be this casual thing, that it didn't have to start at the point of "I love you," that "I love you" could come later. And so I knew that I was like, wow, I felt like I had to get that out of the way and be like, okay, cool. Now we can establish why we're here and why we're doing this, when it doesn't need to be that way. Isn't that a weird thing? I don't know why I thought that.
So when you would start a relationship, you would start already having in mind the "I love you"?
Kind of. More like the idea, like, that's where this was going to go.
Okay. So you were in a long-term relationship mindset.
Yeah, okay. Always.
Huh. That's exhausting.
It is exhausting. Now that I'm out of high school and out of college and attempting to date, this is actually something I've discussed with my therapist several times now, is like, I'm dating people and it's like, but where do we go from here? Why? There's not this high intensity. There's not this high, you know, passion thing. And something that my therapist and I had to talk about was like, no, this is just normal. This is just peaceful. This is okay at how it is. And that's something I missed in high school completely. Completely.
That's interesting.
Isn't it?
I mean, it makes sense to me. You grow up thinking that there's a set trajectory for your life. Like, you graduate high school, you graduate college, you get married, you have kids, you retire. And that's the trajectory of things. So if anything doesn't fit into that, it's not productive. Mm-hmm. And if it's not productive, it's not important. Yeah. When it might be important to have a relationship that doesn't end up in marriage. Yeah. Or, like, not go to college, or take a totally different path, or who knows? Like, you can go through life with bunch of different things, but I feel like here in Twilight, circling all the way back, we are very much adhering to the trajectory.
Yeah. Of the I love you, the let's get married, the kid thing. Yeah. It's exactly the trajectory they take.
So that was interesting.
That was a fun turn.
Ooh. I feel like we went really deep there.
Yeah, we did. And I don't even know if it had anything to do with Twilight or if I just had some kind of shit to get off my chest. I'm damaged.
I mean, either way, it's good.
Yeah.
Actually, what you just said about peace in a relationship, like what your therapist said, oh man, that's what we all want, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just like to be at peace in a relationship.
Yeah.
But I think that's an older want, and a more appropriate teenage want is to have the drama, which brings me to the flip-flopping about will they, won't they, I can kiss you, I can't, I must not, I must stay away from you, all this bullshit, because it's, when you're young, you don't want peace, you're restless, you want all of the intensity and the drama and the angst.
Yeah.
And so that was probably why, as a 22-year-old, it bothered me that they kept vacillating on whether or not to kiss, and also on whether or not Bella should be afraid, and whether or not she is afraid. Because at multiple points in this scene, she's like, oh, I was afraid. Oh, I'm not afraid of you. And which was just annoying repetition. But there's also a bunch of flip-flopping about whether vampires are really meant to attract or repulse humans.
Because it seems like in the movie, they're just meant to attract them.
Yeah.
That was the idea we were all supposed to take, because all of the actors who played the vampires are really gorgeous. And yeah, like, it was only positives seen about why you would be a vampire, why you would want to become a vampire.
Yeah. But then he also says on page 275, most humans instinctively shy away from us, are repelled by our alienness. Which is it?
Since when?
Since when?
Jessica's been trying to get into your pants since freshman year, pal.
Yeah, and I could see that with the Volturi, because they're creepy and have red eyes, but like, if your purpose is to be a human murdering weapon, why would humans be repulsed by that and at the same time be drawn in?
The idea that they're like this perfect killer, but also repulsive, I
think he just finds himself repulsive, and he's projecting it.
Maybe so, but then also the idea that his clan and the Alaskan clan are the only ones that really live with humans full time. You know, the idea that the rest of the vampire world is living more nomadic lives, and they aren't staying and establishing, and they hunt more in like the surprise attack kind of way, like cornering them off. They don't interact with humans the same way that the Cullens do. You know, they're more of the surprise attack. They're more of the jumping and grabbing and getting away type of thing. Like the way a hawk will come down and pick up a mouse and be gone. Whereas the Cullens, in terms of this book, are the first that are kind of trying to live with other human species. And so maybe they've noticed, like, okay, if we were to live among them and we were to be near them the way we are, for, you know, if the rest of our species were, that they would be repulsed to us and we would lose that element of their attraction. Because I think the idea of the vampire hunting the humans is that they're supposed to be cornering people in a dark alley at night where maybe their eye color isn't as prominent, and they're going based off of their voice and their looks and being able to bring them in that way.
So kind of the attraction is in the mystery?
Yeah. The physical, in the way that you can't really see what's alien. You're just kind of, you're the mystery of what you can't see. I guess I'm thinking of like the attack, like where a lion will sneak up on an antelope or something, or like a cheetah will come after.
Death from above.
Sure. Have you ever seen that meme of the lion that can jump 30 feet?
Yes! I meant leap.
It can leap forward 30 feet. Nope.
just a lion just like levitates way up in the air.
Above the giraffe. Ta-da!
Oh, man.
I love that lion and I support him. Can we talk about the only sentence in this book that has aged well?
Yeah.
On page 265, he says, "Please forgive me," he said formally. "I can control myself. You caught me off guard, but I'm on my best behavior now." He waited, but I still couldn't speak. And then he goes, I'm not thirsty today, honestly, and then winked. And I read that and I started crying because I was like, it's a horny joke and it's aged so well. Like he's not thirsty. Like, he doesn't want to drink her blood, but, like, he's literally not thirsty. He's not horny for her.
Oh, my goodness.
And I read that, and I'm like, oh, man. That sentence has just, like, the way that it could be taken now versus how it was taken the first time I read that book is just beautiful. I love it. I'm not thirsty today. I love it. It's great. It's perfect. Do you think Stephenie Meyer hates women?
I think Stephenie Meyer has a lot of internalized misogyny that we all have had and still have to a certain extent.
Because I'm thinking back about how Bella is painted as this wicked temptress, and then, you know, Jessica is said to be not very original, and even Rosalie and Alice they don't have a ton of depth to them. They have more depth than the human women do, but even so. And it just, in the later books, even Bella's the one who's like, I want to have sex with you, Edward. And Edward's like, no, vile temptress, back, beast. And, you know, get behind me, Satan. And, you know, I just don't get it. You know, why is this such a thing here of painting women in this poor light? Like Jessica being not very original. We don't know anything about Jessica. You know, let her be obsessed with looks for now. It's not like she has anything else to do, and at the end of the new moon or eclipse, she becomes valedictorian, so...
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
She's valedictorian in one of the books, so it's not like she's not going anywhere. And yeah, she can be a gossip, and she can be, you know, obsessed with looks, but that doesn't mean that she's not smart and in depth, and... you know, has other interests. Her mind not being very original, well, that's because you wrote it that way. I have such a hard time believing that people are just that basic on the level on the surface, that they don't have deeper things going on beneath, even if they never show it.
Yeah, I think, though, that's part of Bella's character, and that's one of her character flaws, is that she doesn't see very deeply into people that don't interest her immediately.
No, that was Edward speaking. On page, he said on 271, It was an unquestionably a complication that I couldn't simply read your thoughts to know what your reaction was to me. I wasn't used to having to go into such circuitous measures listening to your words in Jessica's mind. Her mind isn't very original, and it was annoying to have to stoop to that.
Right. I don't know how to explain this. Bella is the narrator, and Bella has... in a way, created the character of Jessica. And I think the way that she has created the character of Jessica is reflecting on the way Edward views Jessica. I don't think that Edward would bring it up around Bella if Jessica had more depth than Bella gave her credit for.
Yeah.
In a roundabout way, I can find a reason for that, but also, like, I still don't like it that there are so many flat characters.
Especially flat women.
Yeah, especially flat women, because at least Mike and Ethan have the character trait of pursuing Bella.
Yeah. Eric, you mean?
Eric, yeah. Ethan. Why did I say Ethan?
I don't know. Where did Ethan come from?
I don't know. I can never remember his name.
It's okay.
Also, I peeked at the Edward point of view version of this, and they all have last names.
What?
Yeah. It's not just Mike Newton and everybody else's first names
Mike Newton and everyone else.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're going to talk more about the whole temptress thing in the next chapter.
So tell me a little bit more about Edward's history there. I see you did all that research. Tell me while I listen.
Okay, so moving on to chapter 14, where we get so much information about the Cullens and just vampires in general. So we find out that Edward was born in Chicago in 1901 and died there in 1918. And I went on JSTOR, because of course I did, and found that the 1918 pandemic of Spanish flu was actually really serious and very real. The Spanish influenza wiped out around 1% of the global population in 1918. Which totals to around 20 to 50 million deaths.
In 1 year?
Yeah, in 1 year. It was nicknamed the mother of all pandemics and hit Chicago mainly in October to November of 1918. This is from a study in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America by Kyra Grants and some other authors, called Disparities in Influenza, Mortality, and Transmission Related to Sociodemographic Factors Within Chicago in the Pandemic of 1918. Whoa! What a title.
That's a great title.
They're still trying to find out exactly why this was so big, and it's only in the last 10 or 15 years that they've really started digging deep into the Spanish flu pandemic and the disparities between social classes and who got it and why. It would be related to sanitation if it was a bacterial infection, more likely, but since the flu is a virus and airborne, it tends to hit all people across social classes. Mm-hmm. The home hitter with the Spanish flu was the secondary illnesses that came with it sometimes. So you'd get the Spanish flu, and then your immune system would be so weak from fighting it that you would get a secondary illness like pneumonia or tuberculosis and die from that.
Oh, I fucking love this stuff.
It's a really interesting study. I only read a couple of pages of it, but if you have the chance, I'll put the link in the episode description.
Yeah, do that. I might, next time I have time to read.
So that's how Edward died.
Yay, rip.
But then Carlisle found him.
Carlisle, the shining star, the true hero of this entire series.
Yep. So that's the Spanish flu. Can I talk about Adonis?
Yes, you may.
All right. Get ready for a way too intense reading.
I love it.
On what page is that? I don't even know what page it is.
I don't know. She's called him Adonis a few times.
Has she? A few times?
I thought so.
I can't find it.
But she calls him that.
Yeah, she calls Edward Adonis. So I looked up who Adonis is, or was, in Greek myths. Greek and Roman, because Romans stole everything. But basically, he's Aphrodite's love interest, and she actively pursues him. And so the cult of Adonis was largely women-based. And I found this article by Joseph Reed in Classical Antiquity called The Sexuality of Adonis that says, aromatically, Adonis stands for heady perfume, botanically for profitless agriculture, socially for seduction and extramarital pleasure. So basically, Adonis was birthed from a myrrh tree, a woman called Myrrha, who got turned into a myrrh tree. And so he's the product of excess and luxury, and Aphrodite pursues him. So he's the archetype of a handsome young man being pursued by a woman, which is empowering, but also kind of fucked up because of where Adonis came from, which is a totally different story that we're not going to get into. But it goes back to, I think, what we talked about earlier with the girl being in charge and Bella having the control in the relationship, or the illusion of control.
And her being kind of painted as the seductress.
Yeah, because there are good and bad sides of Aphrodite, and if you think about it, it's she's putting herself in the position of the mythical Aphrodite who's pursuing Adonis. And so Aphrodite can be loving and passionate and kind, but can also be raging jealous and awful and destructive. And she can also be devious and manipulative. And so I think Bella's comparison of Edward to Adonis says a lot more about kind of the character of Bella if we really read into it.
That's all. Wow. I mean, I don't even have a response to that because I didn't look that far into it, but I like everything that you just said. I don't have anything to add because I'm a little whoa. All right.
So now you can talk about premarital sex, and we can have that conversation in the context of Aphrodite and her multifaceted personality pursuing the man and being the seductress and the evil one because of that.
Well, and here's the thing. That's the reason I wanted to bring this up is because when they're talking about marriage here at the end of the chapter, Bella implies that when she refers to marriage, she's referring to sex. Is it real marriage, as in do they have sex? And that goes back into the whole idea of Christian and Mormon culture of premarital sex being this ultimate sin. And I have very complicated feelings about that. And I'm not really sure how to begin. So I'm just going to start talking and hope that it works. Essentially, there's this idea in some Christian culture that sex weakens your ability to love others. That, I don't know I'm sure we've all had that discussion in sex ed when you were in high school about the duct tape being put together and pulled apart and put together and pulled apart. And eventually it gets less sticky. And that's the idea that the more partners you have, the less able to love another person that you are. And I don't think that's the case. And I'm not saying that waiting until marriage is a bad thing, because I definitely thought that was what I was going to do for a long time. I wore a purity ring for a lot of my life and thought, yeah, no, there's no way. I don't want to have sex before marriage. But life didn't happen that way. And I firmly believe that you have to love yourself before you can love others. And being able to explore your sexuality is part of loving yourself. I think we put too much emphasis on sex. It's important. It's a huge step, and I don't think it should be treated lightly. Like, I definitely don't think high schoolers should be out banging each other, because it's a big thing. You know, it is something that's very intimate and very personal. But when you put so much taboo on it, when you put so much on it saying, like, you can't do this, and this is why it's awful, and this is why it's so important to wait until marriage, you accentuate it in a way that it doesn't need to be. Like, sex is just another part of life. But when you're talking about marriage and you're talking about having this partnership, a romantic partnership with somebody for the rest of your life, it goes beyond so much more than that. You know, it goes to commitment is what strengthens the marriage. And you can have that with or without sex. Making it the ultimate declaration of love, sex, is something that weakens it, I think, because essentially when you put that much emphasis on it, you start to not really think about the other things that are important, because it's a physical act, yes, but you know, love in itself is a choice. Love in itself isn't just an emotion. It isn't just an act. It is so much of everything that you do. It's an everyday decision you have to make to love another person. And I think when you put so much emphasis on sex, you take away things that are really, truly important, like whether or not you can communicate together well, whether or not you are physically compatible, emotionally compatible, whether or not you have the same goals. It just puts so much emphasis on it once you do get married. And if you aren't sexually compatible, or if you do put that much pressure on yourself, I feel like the more that we say sex needs to wait until marriage, the more we make marriage just about sex. And I think it's easy to forget that there's so much more than that. And I'm not saying that that's always the case. You know, people who love each other and choose to wait, they can obviously have that commitment and have that understanding of one another. But what do you want to be thinking about on the night of your wedding? You know, when you're dancing with your significant other, do you want to be thinking about, oh my God, this is going to be the first time that we have sex tonight? Or do you want to be thinking about, wow, we have this life that we're going to create together. We're going to have this full thing, and we're going to have this amazing journey together that we get to take as best friends, as partners. And I'm not saying you can't think both things. I'm just thinking when you make it such an illegal taboo, you have more of a chance of just thinking about the one thing and making it more important than it needs to be.
It's not the end all be all.
That's not the only way marriage is real. Marriage isn't real because you two waited for one another. It can be part of it. It can definitely be part of it, but marriage is so much more than just that. It's so much more than saying I love you. It's so much more than waiting until marriage. It's so much more than even just enjoying each other's company. It's wanting to do life together.
Yeah, I think that is a much more adult way of thinking about marriage. I feel like we can't talk about the emphasis that our culture puts on marriage and sex without talking about purity culture.
Yeah.
And the flip side of staying pure before marriage, which I also had a purity ring that I wore on a necklace for quite a while. Purity culture, in what I've seen of Christianity, comes from wanting to be good enough to get into heaven.
Yes.
Like the culture of staying pure and being good enough for God, and that is a possible thing.
It's not possible.
It's not possible, and I think that's why our culture has placed so much emphasis on saving sex for marriage and sex as the end-all be-all of marriage. Because if you're pure and then you get married and then you have sex, it's like, oh, finally, that burden off my shoulders, that cross off my shoulders, when it's not like that.
I pulled up a couple articles here. And I just loved, I've never seen this website before, but I love it. It's called Jezebel. And who's Jezebel? Oh. And the article title is 8 Reasons Premarital Boning is Good for You and Society. I'm just going to read a few of the points, but then I also want to read a comment here that was commented here at the end of the article. So Reason number 6 that Jezebel says it's okay to have premarital sex is that it leads to more stable marriages. This is hilarious because the first line says, spit out that monocle, pop out the record scratch sound. Sex, as in having it before you are married, is associated with longer, more stable marriages? Why? Because feminism. Sound of plate breaking because someone dropped it out of surprise. A society that encourages women to prioritize participation outside of the home leads to more women choosing to go to college to build a stable career before they focus on partnering up and settling down. One of the other reasons is a wedding isn't a magic spell that transforms sex from something bad that is good. You know, I've read articles before about women who were like, even after I was married, I still had a hard time being sexual with my partner because I was so ingrained in the idea that it was impure. And that leads into number 2 of the reasons. Not everyone is sexually compatible, so figure that shit out before you walk down the aisle. And then the last point they made is great. Discouraging people from having premarital sex has never, not once, not in any point in human history, succeeded in getting people to actually stop having sex. And it's true. I mean, abstinence-only teaching does not work. Catholic schools that say abstinence-only, you better believe those girls are having abortions because it just doesn't work.
Well, areas that have abstinence-only sex education, particularly in Texas, actually have higher teen pregnancy rates than other areas where they don't teach abstinence-only. They teach actual sex education.
And then this is a comment made by J.R. Smith EE, talking a little bit about, like, do you really believe that sex is taught to be a very bad, dirty thing by the church? Certainly church teaches against premarital sex, and it should be safe for marriage, but I've never once been told that it's a dirty thing. I have been told it's a gift from God in church many times, which is true. That's definitely what churches say and, like, what the Bible says, but that it just gets twisted and manipulated into, but if you destroy this gift, you're a bad person. So not necessarily the act of sex itself, but wanting to engage in it outside of marriage is what is dirty and wrong, not sex itself. But then this commenter also goes on to say, I'm troubled by the way many young Christians will rush into marriage out of a desperation to have sex that isn't seen as a sin, which leads to divorces sometimes. I think it stems from a larger problem that the church has, which is that it condemns premarital sex so strongly, but is so soft on divorce. If people in the church recognize that marriage is meant to be a lifelong commitment and you just can't take it back, maybe this problem wouldn't be so bad. I think it would be healthier for a person to have premarital sex and then break up rather than rush into marriage to have sex that is okay within the church and then end up getting divorced later. But that does bring up a really good point. Church itself doesn't really seem to promote a positive viewpoint on it. Marriage does need to be more than just sex.
Or an excuse for sex.
Exactly.
That's one of the aspects in which this book is weirdly Christian. Neither Bella nor Edward are explicitly Christians, but they have a lot of the Christian baggage related to purity and extramarital relationships.
And, like, the moment she says, is it marriage in that way? Like, they both knew what she was talking about.
Like, we all know we're equating marriage with sex here. From a literary perspective, it's uncharacteristic. And from a socio-political perspective, it's a yikes.
A yikes moment. I want to write a book, but I just don't even know how to write it in a way that would make sense, because it all makes sense in my mind.
There are a lot of books, and I think especially millennials are starting to unpack this whole thing.
Let's unpack that.
This is what we were told. Yeah.
Self-promotion.
But we're starting to really pay attention to why we believe what we believe about whatever.
And I love it.
So weird. It's so hush-hush and so subtle if you don't grow up in it, but it's also everywhere.
Oh, it's everywhere.
This idea that, like, sex is the epitome of living.
And love.
The only thing to be lived for.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's touted up to be this huge thing, and then it's like, 15 minutes of whatever?
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky! Nina! What is... How did this activity become the biggest phenomenon?
Because it was so
godlike,
taboo.
Touted up thing for our culture.
And there is a level of
why?
intimacy to it that needs to be respected and regarded to. Like, I'm glad that I didn't sleep with my first boyfriend. That would have been a disaster. Like, you definitely have to be more emotionally mature and really able to recognize what it is before you do it. But at the same time, it's just not that big a deal. Commitment and loving one another and having a life together, that is a way bigger deal. Finding out who you are as an independent person is a way bigger deal. You could just build on this for eons and decades.
Oh, yes. I started writing a book about this. I literally started writing a book about this.
I love it. I can't wait to read it.
In a nutshell, to everyone listening, you're fine. You're doing okay.
You're fine.
No matter if you've had sex or not, or if you want to get married, or if you don't, or if you are married, or if you're not, you're fine.
Valid.
You're valid, and I am very single.
Oh, this is a plea for help on Lydia's part. Any willing takers?
That was a self-pep talk.
Lydia is now taking applications for romantic partners. Please inquire on our SoundCloud page.
Hit me up on Twitter.
Oh, I wish you guys could see how red her face is right now. I love you so much.
I hate everything.
You are valid, Lydia. I love you so much. You're valid.
Thank you. Oh, man.
Should we go into a yikes moment before we start crying about our sex lives a little bit more?
All right. My yikes moment is how Edward keeps telling Bella how delicious she smells. And I think that might be the equivalent of wanting to fuck a sandwich.
Yum. Like Mike says, he looks at her like she's something to eat.
What's yours?
Mine is the fact that Bella was not disturbed by the fact that Edward was spying on her, and that she was flattered by it. She was like, "Oh, you watch me sleep? That's so kind." Oh my god.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Anyway, wow, that was a lot of emotionally unpacking some goddamn baggage there.
Yeah, wow.
I feel light and free.
I don't. I just feel like I need to write that book now.
Well, only if I can write the foreword.
Yeah, sure. So this has been our podcast.
This has been a hell of a podcast.
Thanks for listening. Yeah, this has been a hell of a trip. Oh, man. So, as always, you'll see us in 2 weeks. Well, you won't see us. You'll be able to listen to us again in 2 weeks. But until then, we are on Twitter at Let's Unpack Pod. We are on SoundCloud, which might be where you're listening to this. Micah Bad! Or on iTunes, which also might be where you're listening to this, but is where we can't get stats. Tumblr?
No.
Okay. We will see you again in 2 weeks, and until then...
Do it for the vamps.